when people show up authentically as themselves, that's when you get their best work. And so for me, I entered the beauty space well into my 30s. So I felt like I had a very good sense of who I am and what I wanted to accomplish being in this space. Unfortunately, I feel like for a lot of African American women, it just feels like, how do I even navigate it? How do I even get there? And when I get there, can I actually be myself? Can I wear my braids to work? Express what skincare needs I actually have, or how my friends and I interpret skincare or makeup or whatever, right? It's difficult because you don't see anyone like yourself and you're like, well, is my opinion here valid? And I think to those women, I want to say your opinion is very valid. Not only is it valid, but be confident in your Blackness, be confident in your style, be confident in your experiences, be confident in what you think beauty should look like or be.
Welcome back to another episode of Content and Cocktails. We just had an incredible interview with Johnette Reed. She is the global social media manager at L'Oreal. And yes, her job is as cool as it sounds, and she is as cool as she sounds.
And in this episode, there are so many actionable takeaways from how to be an active ally for Black women in the workplace to how to get started in social media management and what you can do now to start building your portfolio.
Mm-hmm. And how to weave storytelling throughout your own personal and professional brand that's going to help you get ahead in your job. So without further ado, let's dive on in.
You're so weird.
I knew you were not going to like that.
Yeah, I don't. Why do you always get these weird voices?
I'm a performer. This is
oh
what
my
we do.
gosh.
I perform. Okay, let's dive in.
Johnette, you have quite an unconventional career journey in the beauty space. And after your master's in journalism and public affairs, what did you think that you wanted to do, and how did that evolve as you gathered more work experience?
Sure. So I initially thought I wanted to be a journalist, right? A television journalist. That was my dream when I went to college, and I really was pursuing that track. And when I went to get my master's, I figured this would give me the name recognition as far as colleges were concerned to get a journalism job, and that was what I was striving for. And then as I entered the program, I realized that there was this social space that was developing. Facebook was coming of age, and so was Twitter. Twitter was actually very big. A lot of breaking news was happening there. And I just saw that this could be the future. And at the time, newspapers had started to die. People were using their mobile devices for more and more things. I'm like really dating myself right now, but that's what happened. And so I was like, you know what? Let me pivot and make or begin to think about social media as a medium for storytelling, because that's what I loved about journalism, was that you were able to tell stories. And so I thought I'd be a journalist, but as time evolved, I got into the social space because I saw that's where news was headed. That's where people were getting their information. And I just journeyed on a path that way. And here we are.
I totally agree. And the way that it's evolved into that's what journalism is now. That's where, of course, I follow reliable sources for my news, but the infographics that pop up on Twitter, on Instagram, that's really how people accept knowledge these days. So you made a good pivot really early on.
Yeah.
So, right now you are the global social media manager at L'Oreal. If I could whistle,
Yes.
I'd do that woo, that's crazy. What does a day in your life look like with that role?
So I'm actually the global social media manager at L'Oreal at SkinCeuticals. So it's for a specific brand. L'Oreal houses, over 80 brands, over 100 brands or something like that. And so I work for the SkinCeuticals brand, which is a cosmeceutical company or a skincare brand. So a day in my life can look very different from day to day. Pre-pandemic, I'd go into our office into New York at Hudson Yards, and I could either be off to a photo shoot to shoot products. I could actually be on the plane going to France to explain to our various markets which are our country markets. So we sell in various countries, and I'd go off and tell them how to use the assets we had developed at the global level. Or I could be at my desk actually concepting with our art team, our creative team about, a campaign, or about, every brand has core pillars, and it's basically like what they believe in. And so how can we actually bring those core pillars and tell that story of the brand through our creative content? And so that's kind of what so I could be in a meeting with them trying to discuss that. Or I could be in a meeting talking about how we're going to create one unified global Instagram instead of several. So the days really vary. No day is the same. And I think that's the beauty of being in that sort of space, is that it's ever evolving, and it evolves very quickly. And I think that that's something that I actually really love about it.
Talk to us a little bit about that global aspect that you mentioned, because I think that's pretty unique. There's definitely lots of social media managers out there, but what is that global in the front of your title? How does that make your job different than just a regular social media manager?
Sure. So things that are happening in China, right? They're usually like million years ahead of us. Or things that are happening in Europe, they sell in a different kind of market setup. So here in the US, you can buy SkinCeuticals online, or you could be prescribed it by your doctor, or a clinical spa, or clinical spa that actually distributes the brand. Whereas in Europe, you have to go to a pharmacy, which is not like our Walgreens or anything. These pharmacies only sell skincare, beauty. They do sell medical products as well, but they don't sell like your odds and ends. Like, it's more of an upscale establishment. So the brand is a premium brand. And so that means we are global. And that means it's just interpreting, like making sure that whatever content we're creating interprets well across the world, right? So like making sure that everyone, and this has been a personal goal of mine, to make sure that our consumers all see themselves within the content that we're creating. So if we're using models, we want to make sure that we have a diversified cast of models, and it's not one sort of model. Traditionally, the brand has been a Eurocentric brand. So we are working diligently, especially when I get back, to make sure that we are encompassing what the world looks like, so that your consumer in Asia feels like, oh, this is for me. Your consumer in Africa feels like it's for me. And there are also different needs from country to country for what people are interested in. For instance, a big one in, I'd say, the UK is retinol use and how to use retinol, right? And so we had to create these series of posts and stories to address that for them. Whereas in the US, there are just a plethora of things that people ask, but we also leave it to our individual markets to create niche content, so what they need specifically for their market. But at the global head, we sort of help to police the content that they're creating and make sure that it's on brand. Also, that we create content that's on brand for everyone to use, because a lot of our teams are small and they don't have a digital manager, and so I am like their proxy digital manager, and they wait on the monthly content that I develop to be able to use it on their channels.
That is so cool how you kind of have you're like the puppet master for SkinCeuticals, for social media. And even just talking with you now, it's very apparent. And I know you told Natalie that you're a storyteller at heart. So what does this mean for you? And then how do you translate that into the work you do today, just based off what you just told us?
Sure. I think consumers are changing, right? They want to be connected to your brand story. They want to know that you have a purpose outside of selling them something. And so for me, that's amazing, because I love stories. Give me a docuseries, give me a documentary, and I'm into it. Like, I want to know your story. I want to know, because I believe your story, or telling the story, allows me to understand you better, and we can find commonalities that make us the same, that are relatable. And so for me, that's why I love storytelling so much. I just think it's like, oh wow, that person has such a unique way or a unique path or whatever. You just find these nuggets of gold, right, to someone's personality or their trajectory or where they currently are. And so it's no different for a brand. And like I said, consumers are really hungry and yearning for brands to actually share their story with them, right? So that they know that that brand has purpose and that brand is doing good outside of just peddling them a product. So, you know, right now in my job, we're trying to tell the story of SkinCeuticals and really trying to understand how we do that outside of our products. And I think our story is really one about tenacity, and it's really one about grit and grind and being able to succeed past barrier, because we do a lot of extensive testing with our products, and that's what sets it apart. That's what makes it a premium product, and that's what, you know, really makes it's a point of difference for the brand. And so all of that testing and, you know, you could have a product that actually fails time and time again, but we continue to test. And we do that to be able to say, you know, that this is our story, much like you in life, right? And you may go through many things and fall down 10 times, but it's that 11th time that you get up that makes the difference. So those are the kinds of stories that we're trying to bring forward with the brand and explain and help people understand so that they can feel more of the
I love how you think about social media as more than just a platform for posting and sharing content. And I don't think most people think of it in the way that you are. And for people listening right now who want to go into social media and are applying to companies, I think coming at it from a storytelling angle is really powerful, because with social media, it can be a platform for good if you use it in the right way, and a really great platform to tell those stories. So that's incredible that that's the way that you approach it. And I like too how you describe, you know, this brand like a person. You know, it's not just like this company, this boring company. It's a person that has characteristics and different personality traits. Tell us a little bit more. What is your favorite part about your job and being a social media manager?
You know, I think that my favorite thing is that it's actually a job, right? And if we go back to storytelling for just a second, I think that was the greatest lesson that I learned in graduate school, is that social media, all of these are just vehicles to tell a story. But at heart, you have to be a good storyteller. And that was like gold for me, because it's what sets you apart, right, from your counterparts. Because like you said, a lot of people are just creating content to either, especially now, either to go viral or to sell you something or whatever. So I think if you can actually, I think authenticity shines through when you're able to actually be genuine about your story, regardless of what you're doing on social media. So I think my favorite part about the gig is that it's like, when I started out in the social space, people were like, is that a job? And I would constantly be like, I think it can be a job. I know it will be a job someday. And here we are like 10 years later, and it's a very viable job.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's been perhaps, you know, my favorite thing about the job, is that my day-to-day consists of really digging into these platforms and figuring out, right, like how to get people to engage outside of just a product. I think it's really magical when you get it right, you know.
Absolutely.
So L'Oreal was that's a makeup company. Like when my mom first bought me makeup, it was L'Oreal. Like I remember the very first lipstick that I ever got when I was a kid was L'Oreal. So, and it's definitely a name that is well known, and even SkinCeuticals, I think too, is something that most people know. So, what are some perks that come with working at such a large makeup company or beauty company?
Oh gosh. Everything you talked about, right? So there's always makeup around, there's always nail polish around, there are always beauty trends that we're looking at, and really cool spaces that we get to enter and be privy to first that are cool. And because L'Oreal is a French company, we do a lot of business in Europe. Well, it's based out of Paris, and so I'm in Paris often, and so those are the yeah.
I'm in Paris. I'll take us with you.
Yeah. My boyfriend's always like, I'm always like, I gotta go to Paris, and he's like, oh, poor you, you know.
Some Carrie Bradshaw shit right there.
Yeah, it's kind of And also to be a Black woman in this space is really unique. It's very unique because oftentimes I am the only one in the space. Um, and so I do feel like, wow, this is cool. And I want to bring more women of color to experience this, because it often feels like some secret club or something, like just all the things that we get to do and see. And I don't take it for granted, and I don't, take it lightly. And I am very grateful because, like I said, I get Christmas at my home, for all of my female cousins and sister, and everyone is like amazing because I have all these skincare and beauty and all, products that I'm able to gift. And I just think it's really, that's the perk. Those are the perks of the job. And then also relationships in the industry, like with photographers and stylists. And, that's also a big perk because I can use that on my, my personal work that I do as well.
Going to Paris, you get to spoil all your cousins, all of the women in your life. And you touched on something really important, that you're very passionate about actively discussing the challenges that Black women face at work. So talk to us a bit more about your experience as a Black woman in the workplace, in the beauty industry, when that is typically dominated by white women.
Sure. So I think that when people show up authentically as themselves, that's when you get their best work. And so for me, I entered the beauty space well into my 30s. So I felt like I had a very good sense of who I am and what I wanted to accomplish being in this space. Unfortunately, I feel like for a lot of African-American women, it just feels like, how do I even navigate it? How do I even get there? And when I get there, can I actually be myself? Can I wear my braids to work? Can I, express what skincare needs I actually have? Or or how my friends and I interpret skincare or makeup or whatever, right? Because it's difficult because you don't see anyone like yourself, and you're like, well, is my opinion here valid? And I think to those women, I want to say your opinion is very valid. Not only is it valid, but be confident in your Blackness. And what do I mean by that? Be confident in your style, be confident in your experiences, be confident in what you think beauty should look like or be. Because when we do have the opportunity to be in those spaces, we get to shape, the narrative as well. And so that's something that I'm very passionate about, is making sure that the narrative is inclusive, right? So like, if we're talking about skincare, redness is not a condition that be specific in our language, be specific in our visuals, because like, for example, if you're talking about redness, some women of color experience redness, but some may not. On deeper skin tones, you're not going to be red, but you may get a gray, look after using a sunscreen, or you may get there are different words that we can use to make sure that we're being inclusive. And so those are things that when you sit at the table, you're able to challenge. Now, I think the question becomes, how do you even navigate to the table? And I think a lot of times what it is that there's no straight path. And I know for myself, I didn't navigate. It was a very zigzagged, turn around before I actually arrived in that space. But every experience that I've had thus far has equipped me for where I am today. I know real women, right? I know women who actually deal with issues. And to my great surprise, a lot of my friends who are majority African-American women are like, I know SkinCeuticals, I use that for my dark spots. And so I take that back to the brand and I say, hey, it's important that we're inclusive in our visuals, because you have not only our visuals, but our testing, because we have women that look like me and they want to be seen in the brand as well. So how do we do that, right? So I think that know that you have a place, know that your voice is important, know that your story and your narrative matters, and that you can also speak up, and I think have a responsibility to some degree to advocate. And I don't think it's also a pick your battles type of situation. I don't sit at the table every single day and say, Black women are not heard, but I do at I think strategic points say what I need to say. And I think that that's important.
Speaking up can sometimes be really scary to do, especially when you're young and you're looking to please and to, gain the approval of your boss. So, if something does happen, or if what is your advice for a Black woman who's struggling to show up authentically at work and is seeing things that, that aren't right, but might be afraid to speak up and talk about it?
I think allyship is important, right? And I think being thoughtful in what you say is super important as well. But what does allyship look like, right? Because it's not necessarily on Black people or people of color to fix the problem that's afflicting them. That's the issue.
Mhm.
Is that why should I be in the space and have to fix this issue when I'm not the one projecting the issue? So I think that getting people to understand that, and I think there's a shift in the country. I think there's a shift in many workplaces right now that's happening, or happening in the last few months, where people are being more open to listening because there is really a call out culture that's happened, right? Like any organizations, and I think we've all and so find someone who's willing to listen. If you don't have the courage, not the courage, that's not the right word, but if you feel like you can't speak up, right, because of whatever reason, I mean, I've been there too, right, where you're in a place and you're like, oh, this is my boss, or this is whomever, I don't know if this is the best thing to say right now, I'm young, no worries. Find somebody who can be an ally to you, and maybe in a position above yours or a position beside yours, so that you all can actually, you can feel confident, or you can talk to them in confidence. You can say, hey, look, this is something that I'm feeling. What do you think that the next step should be for me? Find those people in the space to help you deliver your message, because I guarantee you there's at least one, or at least two that you can speak with and say, let's talk about this. Who do you think we should go to next? Is it my boss? Is it above my boss? But like, don't let it go unchecked or untalked about, because sometimes it's ignorance. Sometimes people actually don't know. But if you do feel intimidated, I think that, of course, if you got to talk to your HR, do that. But if there's an ally there that maybe is your a white counterpart, that's fine. Talk to her and let her know, like, hey, this is what I'm feeling. And she should be open, or he should be open to hearing what you have to say and be able to help you navigate as well.
I absolutely agree with everything you just said. Something as you've called out, that's call out culture now. And that's something that's been so great for the workplace, but also is like, it's pulling up the covers under a lot of terrible shit that is happening. But
Yeah.
one of the things that is so prevalent right now is that this responsibility to educate is falling on our Black coworkers. And on top of doing their regular job, they're having to show up again to educate people and like advocate for themselves. So if I have a Black coworker or a friend, and I am that ally that they can go to, what can I be doing and what can our listeners be doing to be an active ally in the workplace without having to have that coworker come and seek me out?
Yeah. So I think that as an ally, it's your responsibility to do as much educating on your own as you can, right? So when culture was at its height around the George Floyd killing, I'm on maternity leave at the moment, but SkinCeuticals reached out. My coworkers reached out and asked my opinion. And my opinion is that, what is the work you all can do? Because we have long, as I think people of color, been doing the work, right? So the work of allies are to bring attention to injustice or things that are not right in the workplace or anywhere, right? And to say, hey, yeah, they don't have to be the only ones to speak about it. We too can say this is not right. Aside from that, how can we educate ourselves? How can we understand the layers of being African American, being Black? What does that look like, right? Like, and so what readings can we do? What trainings can we have? And so I think that that is what allyship looks like in its truest form, is you taking on the mantle as well, or more so, and saying, you know what, this is a human issue. It's not just a Black issue. It's an issue of being treated not equally. And so how do we fix this human issue? Because if it were me saying the ally, I would want someone to advocate on my behalf. I would want someone to educate themselves, be open to learning, and be open to learning from, your African American coworkers, and then ask, how can we do the work? What can we do? And therefore go forward. And also accepting that every Black person doesn't want to educate. Every Black person doesn't want to show you how to be an ally, but there are some that do. And if they are open to that, then carefully learning and listening. Listening is, I think, by far the greatest thing that you can do.
I think that is an incredible takeaway for everybody listening right now, is that, being an ally is not a passive job. It's not something that you're just like, yeah, I support Black Lives Matter. It's something that you actively need to be doing, that you're actively learning, and you're listening to your Black coworkers, or you're being more vigilant of saying, like, if something was wrong. It's so much easier we've talked about this from woman to woman. If, you're in a meeting and another woman gets spoken over, instead of putting the burden on that woman to speak up for herself, it's so much easier if there's another woman in the room. So being an active ally, I think, for everyone listening, is something that they should definitely take away and start practicing immediately.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's good. And for me personally, because something so dear to my heart, I have no problem being in the space and speaking up, right? Like, and I'm strategic in the way that I do it. But I know some coworkers who are like, I don't want to do that. And that's fine too, right? Because it can be a weighty burden to have to feel like you always have to speak up, or you always have to say,
Absolutely.
And so switching gears like a little bit backwards. So you have this incredible career that you've built for yourself. You are able to be a Black woman in power, which I think is incredible to have other Black women look up to that, because I think it's rare and it's difficult for people who aren't seeing that representation at the top. So for someone who's looking to go into your career of social media management, how can they start preparing themselves now while they're young to make that transition easier for them?
I think wow, I don't consider myself a woman in power, but thank you.
We do.
That was very, very gracious. I think for any woman, African American or not, I would give this advice. It's important that you begin to use your own social channels to develop content right now. So long before I went to L'Oreal, I started developing different pieces of content for various platforms I had started on my own, because I knew I wanted to transition into the space, but I didn't know how I would, because I didn't have this glossy portfolio of I interned at Prada and I didn't have that. And so I knew that I needed to create on my own, and I'm a creator at heart. And so I just started creating. I created one platform. It was called Love Letters to Brothers, and it was actually a platform of that was various people in various cities holding up affirmations on Black and white boards. All of the pictures were in Black and white, and we just were looking to really, it was the height of the time when Philando Castro had been killed. There were just killings happening, and I felt like, how can we write love letters to Black men to make them feel affirmed? And so we started this project, and it really took off, and it was really cool, right? And so that was something I was able to put on my portfolio. Fast forward, I was working at a nonprofit, and there I created something called Her Power. And I was like, I want to be able to show women, how to use social media in their businesses in the beauty space. And that also helped me, right? Be able to put that on my resume. And when I went to L'Oreal, I was like, oh, wow, you've done all this content creation? How? And I'm like, well, on my own. And so that's the thing, is use these platforms that are free. TikTok is free. Instagram is free. Facebook is free. You don't have to pay anything unless you want to boost, and so on and so forth. But it's important that you use your platforms as some sort of portfolio. And even if you don't want to use your personal platform, then create a separate one that you can use to build your portfolio. Content creation is key. Beginning to just understand how content works and just your own. And at that time, I grabbed a camera. I went to Best Buy and I bought a camera and I started taking photographs. I was like, I just have to figure this out. And here we are.
Here we are. A couple things I want to pick out of what you just said is, first of all, by having a portfolio. This shouldn't be like a very rigorous type of thing. It should be something that you are passionate about, that you are committed to, like both of those projects that you started, because then it doesn't feel like work. And then when you go and have those interviews and they're saying, wow, I'm impressed. How did you do all this content creation and for who? And you say, I did it for me. Here's why I did it. Here's the results. That
Yep.
is impressive AF. Like, to be able to do something good for yourself that personally fulfills you while also building your portfolio. I think that's the best piece of advice that you can take away, to find out what that is today. Go and just dive into your creative side and say, what can I create that will help me both personally and professionally? And you'll come up with something golden.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, and like you said, it's such a great talking point in an interview, because people are like, wow, you just created this. And you're like, yeah, because I felt strongly about it. And so, you have, and there, I don't have to tell your audience how many social media influencers have literally just blown up by just creating. And like, that's how you get noticed in this space, is creating and riding in your own lane and creating what you're passionate about. And it's amazing because now it's easy to find. I can type in a hashtag and find whatever I'm looking for on any platform. And so I think that people should really take advantage of that.
And two, you weren't a photographer. You literally just went to Best Buy and bought a camera. So like, there's really no barrier to being able to go create something like that. And especially right now, if you are unemployed and you don't have a job, or maybe you're in a job, you're unhappy and you want to switch to social media, what a fun and, easy way to do something that's going to put you miles ahead of all future applicants.
I agree. And I mean, and while I was creating these things, because now I don't really have the time to create because I am in a creative space all day long. But before, I wasn't in jobs that I like absolutely adored, right? I was like a secretary at one point. I was working for the government at one point. And I was like, how do I express my creativity? And this was a way that I found was very gratifying for me.
And I have another question on that. So it's, even though it sounds, of course, I should do that tactically. So yes, I have my iPhone camera. I might go and get a camera from Best Buy. Like, what is maybe like your top tip to start creating content that is within your own voice and you're not like just reaching for things that maybe you shouldn't be reaching for?
Sure. So I'd say sit down first and foremost and identify what it is that you want to create, like in what space and what genre. And it doesn't have to be, I have a friend and she says that she's a serial creator. And that's a lot of people. So it doesn't, you might be a lifestyle, food, social justice, blah, blah, blah. Like you may have all of these things that you want to create. Put them in buckets, right? And say, I'm going to create 3 images or 3 posts around this, and create yourself a content calendar. So I think it all starts with some sort of organization to whatever it is you want to create. So if it's a content calendar, and then from there you say, I'm going to create 10 images in each bucket, at least you have some sort of plan. Furthermore, I just think you have to so tactically, you have to think about bandwidth and also sustaining whatever you create, because that was an issue that I always ran into. It's like, I can't sustain this anymore. Like, then it would just fall by the wayside, which is like both of the projects I mentioned. But while we were in the heart of it, we had to start thinking like, okay, we need 3 of these and 3 of these and 4 of these, and we'll do this week, and then we'll take 2 weeks off and we'll come back, because it was a resources issue too, right? I didn't have like $1 million to just shoot whatever I wanted whenever. And so I had to think about that. And even as I think about revamping Her Power, now that I'm a mom, I think about it often, and I will probably dive into it once I get a handle on this mom thing. But it's like, I think of it the same way, like, okay, how will I create content, and which buckets will I create content? What will that look like? And, I have a lot more organization behind it now, because I know that that's what it'll take to sustain it. So first and foremost, I'd say just sit down, write your idea down, and tactically from there, build a content calendar, which is basically like, I'm going to post this at 10 o'clock on Monday, and then see how many pieces you need for a month, times it times 12, and go.
build your buckets to build your brand, set yourself up for success. I
Boom.
feel like, Natalie, we have to do that. We got to build our buckets. I'm like writing this down as you're talking.
Johnette, that's amazing. I really, really hope everyone listening is going to actually do that and take that advice, because I mean, it's not easy, but it's simple, and it's something that you can act on today. And there's nothing that's preventing you, no barriers in front of you for why you can't go and start creating content immediately.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm taking my own advice as I'm talking.
Okay. You build your buckets. We'll build ours. We'll meet back. We'll talk about our buckets.
Buckets. Exactly.
And Johnette, while at Content and Cocktails, we are all about working hard. We also enjoy to kick back and relax at the end of a workday. So what is your favorite drink that you enjoy to end after a hard day of working?
My favorite drink, I love rosé in the summertime, and there's this Jenny O's frosé ice cream sherbet like, and you can put it in your rosé, and it's like the most amazing thing in life. Just discovered that not too long ago. But if I have to just have a traditional drink, I'll probably have like a Moscow Mule.
Ooh, good go-to. I want that frosé though.
Is it too early for that?
Yeah.
And Jenna, I can totally picture you like on a New York rooftop drinking your frosé, like in the middle of summer. I can see it. That's some content I'd like to see from you.
Funny, I never want to be in front of the camera like that. Like only like when we just did our family photos, and so like those are really snazzy, but outside of that, I'm like, oh, I'm good. Yeah, but I'm trying to figure it out, because like a lot of social media, especially in the space that I dabble in, is like people want to know you.
Yeah.
They want to know your life and all this business. And so I'm like, okay, I guess.
Well, if I have to get dressed and put on makeup and drink rosé on a rooftop, I guess I will, just for us.
Really cool place to work with these. They have popsicles and they put them in the champagne, but this is a different one. You can do this at home, all in the comfort of your home. You don't have to be in the New York rooftop. Just get the and get you a rosé and do it all at home.
Okay, perfect. I'll be eating that for breakfast today. But Johnette, thank you so much for joining Natalie and I. We had so much fun talking with you. There were so many great tips that you left, and also just a lot of inspiration. So thank you so much for choosing to spend time with us, even though you have a little 5-month-old baby waiting for you.
I so appreciate this. I hope that it's inspired someone, and I hope that I wish you great success in this podcast. What you're doing is needed, and I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. That means a lot.
And that's it for this week. If you're looking for more information on Johnette, go ahead and check out contentcocktails.com for some more information and some secret goodies in her show notes.
Secret goodies. See you there. See you next week. Love you. Bye.
And there's Alexa and her awkward voices. And we'll see you next Thursday at happy hour.
Let me live, woman. Okay. Love you. Bye.